My child, hold on a little longer. Not because every problem is about to disappear. Not because tomorrow is guaranteed to be easy. Hold on because the pain you feel today does not contain the whole story. Perhaps you have been trying to stay strong while something inside you is growing tired. You may be waiting for an answer that has not come. You may be carrying a financial burden, a strained relationship, a frightening medical question, or a grief you cannot explain without your voice beginning to shake. Maybe you have prayed, but nothing seems different. Maybe you have tried to remain hopeful, but your heart keeps asking, how much longer can I do this? There are moments when disappointment becomes so heavy that hope begins to feel foolish. You stop expecting good news because expecting hurts. You stop telling people how you feel because you are tired of hearing simple answers to complicated pain. But listen carefully, my beloved one. Your exhaustion is not proof that you have failed. Your tears are not proof that you have lost your faith. Fear does not make you weak. And waiting does not mean you have been forgotten. There was a day when 2 of my disciples believed that everything they had hoped for was over. They were walking away from Jerusalem toward a village called Emmaus. The road stretched ahead of them for several miles. Dust rose beneath their feet. The city behind them was still filled with tension, confusion, and sorrow. Only a few days earlier, they had watched their dreams collapse. They had believed I was the one who would redeem Israel. Then they saw me arrested. They heard the accusations. They witnessed the crucifixion. And when I died, something inside them seemed to die as well. That morning, some women had returned from the tomb with astonishing news. They said the stone had been moved. They said the tomb was empty. They said angels had told them I was alive. But the 2 travelers did not know what to believe. So they walked. They spoke quietly at first. Then their conversation became more intense. They questioned one another. They repeated the events. They searched for an explanation that would make the pain understandable. And while they were walking, I came near. They did not recognize me. That is the first truth your heart may need today. Hope can be closer than you realize, even when you cannot recognize it. I asked them what they were discussing. They stopped walking. Their faces were filled with sadness. One of them, named Cleopas, answered with surprise. He asked how I could have been in Jerusalem without knowing what had happened there. So I let them tell the story. I listened while they described their disappointment. I listened while they spoke about the cross. I listened while they explained what they had expected and what they had lost. Then Cleopas said words that revealed the wound beneath everything else. We had hoped. Those words carried more than disappointment. They carried the grief of a future that seemed to have vanished. We had hoped. Perhaps you understand those words. You had hoped the marriage would heal. You had hoped the job would last. You had hoped the test result would be different. You had hoped the person you loved would stay. You had hoped your prayer would be answered in the way you imagined. My dear child, I did not shame those disciples for speaking honestly. I did not walk away because their understanding was incomplete. I stayed beside them. Then I began to explain the scriptures. I showed them that suffering had not destroyed the plan of God. The cross was not the end of the story. What appeared to be defeat was part of a redemption they had not yet understood. They thought they were walking away from hope. In reality, hope was walking beside them. There is an important detail that modern readers often miss. Emmaus was about 7 miles from Jerusalem, depending on the exact location scholars identify with the village. That journey would have taken time. This was not a brief conversation at a doorway. It was a long walk through grief, confusion, questions, and gradual understanding. Sometimes clarity comes that way. Not all at once. Not in a sudden flash. Sometimes it comes step by step, as you keep walking, keep listening, keep asking, and keep allowing truth to challenge the story fear has been telling you. Another important detail appears when the travelers reached the village. The day was nearly over. In the ancient world, traveling after dark could be dangerous. Roads were not brightly lit. Travelers could face thieves, wild animals, uneven ground, and cold night air. The 2 disciples urged me to stay with them. Hospitality was deeply important in their culture. Welcoming a traveler was more than good manners. It was an act of protection, generosity, and shared humanity. So I entered the house. When we sat at the table, I took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened. They recognized me. But that was not the only transformation. They looked at one another and said, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road?" Their circumstances had not been erased. Jerusalem was still dangerous. Their questions had not all disappeared. But their understanding had changed. And because their understanding changed, their direction changed. They had been walking away from Jerusalem in sorrow. Now they stood up and returned to Jerusalem with hope. The night was dark, but they were no longer controlled by darkness. The first lesson is this: pain can limit what you see without changing what is true. The disciples saw the cross, but they could not yet see resurrection. They saw the empty tomb, but they did not yet understand what it meant. They saw a stranger walking beside them, but they did not recognize my presence. You may also be seeing only part of your story. You may see the bill you cannot pay, but not yet the conversation, opportunity, or wise decision that may help you move forward. You may see the relationship that has become silent, but not yet know whether healing, boundaries, counseling, or a new beginning will become necessary. You may see a closed door and assume that your life has no direction. Do not confuse limited vision with final truth. You do not have to understand everything today in order to take one faithful step. The second lesson is this: honest sorrow is not the enemy of faith. The disciples did not hide their disappointment from me. They told me exactly what they had hoped for. They spoke about confusion, rumors, fear, and loss. You are also allowed to speak honestly. Faith is not pretending that something does not hurt. Faith is bringing the truth of your pain into the presence of God without allowing pain to become your only voice. You may say, "I am afraid." You may say, "I am tired." You may say, "I do not understand." An honest prayer can be simple. Lord, this is heavier than I expected. Help me take the next step. The third lesson is this: hope often returns through movement, truth, and community. The disciples kept walking. They listened to Scripture. They invited a traveler into their home. They shared a table. Then they returned to their community. Notice what they did not do. They did not remain isolated forever. They did not allow disappointment to make every decision. They did not wait until they felt completely fearless. They moved while their hearts were still healing. Today, hope may begin with one small action. Call someone trustworthy. Write down the fear that keeps circling in your mind, then write one practical response beside it. Open the letter you have been avoiding. Ask for financial guidance. Schedule the medical appointment. Speak with a pastor, counselor, family member, or trained professional. If your body is hurting, seek appropriate medical care. If your emotional pain has become overwhelming or persistent, please reach out for professional support. Asking for help is not a failure of faith. Wisdom often arrives through people who are prepared to walk beside you. My precious child, you do not need to solve your entire life tonight. You do not need to know every turn in the road. You may not be able to change your circumstances immediately, but you can refuse to let fear become your guide. I walked beside two discouraged travelers before they recognized me. I listened before I corrected their understanding. I stayed with them until their sorrow began to make room for hope. Let that story remind you that confusion is not the end. Delay is not the end. Grief is not the end. There may still be difficult conversations ahead. There may still be practical decisions to make. There may still be days when your heart feels heavy. But you can walk through them with wisdom. You can rest without giving up. You can ask for help without shame. You can hold hope without pretending that everything is easy. Hope does not always arrive as a dramatic miracle. Sometimes it begins as enough strength to get out of bed. Enough courage to make one phone call. Enough clarity to say no to what is harming you. Enough peace to wait until you can make a wise decision. So breathe slowly, my beloved one. Release the demand to understand everything at once. Take the next honest step. The road may feel long, but you do not have to walk it alone. May your mind find rest from endless worry. May your heart receive courage for the decisions ahead. May you find trustworthy people who will listen without judgment. May those who are sick receive compassionate and appropriate care. May those who are grieving be surrounded by patience and kindness. May peace enter the places where fear has been speaking too loudly. And may you discover, one step at a time, that hope can remain alive even before the road becomes clear. If these words speak to your heart, you may write this sentence in the comments. Hope is still walking beside me. Hold on, my child. The road is not finished, and neither is your story. This video is an educational and artistic devotional reflection based on biblical themes. It is not a new divine revelation, medical advice, or a guarantee of any specific outcome. What part of the road to Emmaus speaks most deeply to you today? Share your reflection, or leave a word of encouragement for someone who may be walking through a difficult season.